Your biological clock is being actively front-run by institutional algorithms that trade human fatigue like low-float penny stocks. High-frequency trading desks do not just exploit market inefficiencies. They exploit the precise window of neurological vulnerability that opens inside your prefrontal cortex every afternoon at exactly 1400 hours. When your focus fractures, a quantitative fund somewhere collects a premium. The entire digital economy is engineered to extract liquidity from your fading attention span, turning your metabolic deceleration into their arbitrage. This is not a productivity crisis. It is a structural routing error in your neural architecture. By treating your daily energy reserves as a static bucket instead of a dynamic liquidity pool, you are giving away your cognitive edge to systems designed to outlast you. Optimization isn't about working harder. It is about systemic risk management. To understand why you are losing this asymmetric war, you have to look at the clearinghouses of the global financial system. Institutional market makers survive by maintaining zero inventory overnight. They minimize exposure to volatility by flattening their positions before the closing bell rings. Your brain operates on the exact opposite, highly inefficient framework. You accumulate massive cognitive debt throughout the morning, carrying a heavy inventory of metabolic waste products inside your cerebral interstitial fluid. And then you expect your neural networks to settle those accounts while you are actively trying to execute high-stakes decisions. The afternoon crash is simply a forced liquidation event triggered by your central nervous system to prevent total systemic collapse. When your adenosine clearance mechanisms get overwhelmed, your brain defaults to a defensive, low-power state. This isn't a failure of willpower. It is a predictable margin call on your biology. The hidden link between retail market microstructure and human neurochemistry lies within a process known as stochastic resonance. In financial markets, random noise can occasionally align to amplify a weak signal, causing sudden, violent price movements out of nowhere. Inside your ventromedial prefrontal cortex, a similar phenomenon dictates your processing speed. When your neural circuits are flooded with chaotic, uncoordinated inputs from constant digital notifications, your internal signal-to-noise ratio plummets. Your brain spends immense amounts of metabolic energy trying to filter out the background static. By the time you need to execute a complex analytical task, your cellular ATP reserves are completely spent. You aren't lacking motivation. You are suffering from profound information pollution that physically degrades the electrical conductivity of your synapses. Look at how elite algorithmic systems handle data overload to see the solution. They utilize asynchronous data pipelines. They do not process every incoming packet of market information in real time. Instead, they route non-essential data to secondary buffers, keeping the primary execution engine completely clear of debris. You must implement a strict biological buffer system inside your workday. This requires the deliberate deployment of targeted cognitive sensory deprivation protocols right before your peak productivity windows. Instead of pushing through the fatigue with external stimulants that only mask the underlying deficit, you must artificially drop your neural workload to absolute zero for a specific, calibrated duration. This resets the baseline sensitivity of your dopamine receptors and clears the processing queue. The traditional corporate schedule is a relic of industrial-era manufacturing built for manual labor, not high-output cognitive execution. It assumes a linear output curve that does not exist in high-stakes environments. Real cognitive performance is violently nonlinear. A single hour of peak state execution yields higher strategic returns than 12 hours of sluggish, distracted grinding. When you try to match the linear demands of a legacy corporate structure, you introduce massive friction into your biological machinery. The secret to breaking this cycle is treating your attention as a highly volatile asset class that must be hedged with extreme prejudice. You do not leave your capital exposed to market risk without a stop-loss order in place. Yet you leave your mind exposed to continuous disruption without a single protective boundary. Consider the concept of order flow toxicity. In market microstructure, this occurs when an influx of highly informed trades toxicifies the order book. forcing market makers to widen their spreads or shut down entirely to avoid catastrophic losses. Your brain experiences order flow toxicity every time you shift context between deep analytical work and reactive communication channels like email or messaging apps. Each context switch leaves an architectural footprint behind, known as attention residue. This residue clogs your working memory capacity, drastically widening your cognitive spreads. You become slower to process information, less creative, and highly prone to basic execution errors. To fix this, you must construct an impenetrable firewall around your primary execution windows, treating external inputs exactly like toxic order flow that must be completely quarantined. The infrastructure of modern knowledge work is actively weaponized against your biology. Every interface you interact with is optimized for engagement, not your individual productivity. Engagement is a polite word for dopamine extraction. Digital platforms track your latency, your scroll speed, and your dwell time to build a hyper-predictive model of your psychological vulnerabilities. They know exactly when your willpower flags, and they deliver the precise piece of low-value, high-novelty content required to hijack your attention loop. When you check your phone during a minor lull in focus, you aren't taking a break. You are allowing an external algorithm to strip mine your remaining cognitive capital for ad revenue. To reclaim your cognitive sovereignty, you have to understand the mathematical reality of your neural bandwidth. Your brain represents roughly 2% of your total body weight, yet it consumes more than 20% of your basal metabolic energy. This energy expenditure is dominated by the maintenance of resting membrane potentials across your neurons. Your brain is a hyper-expensive supercomputer that runs on a very tight power budget. When you waste that budget on low-utility informational processing, you are effectively bankrupting your executive functions before the afternoon even begins. Elite performance is fundamentally an exercise in energetic resource allocation. You must become a ruthless guardian of your cellular energy currency. We must analyze the specific mechanism of action behind the midday performance cliff. It is driven primarily by the accumulation of a metabolic byproduct called glutamate in the lateral prefrontal cortex. As you perform difficult cognitive tasks, glutamate builds up in the extracellular space outside your neurons. When concentrations reach a critical threshold, it alters the local neurochemical balance, making further cognitive control progressively more difficult and unpleasant. This is why hard work feels physically exhausting. Your brain is signaling that its local storage capacity for metabolic waste has been entirely exhausted. The only way to clear this glutamate burden without sleeping is to systematically reduce the activation rate of your frontoparietal networks. This brings us to the core protocol used by algorithmic traders to maintain a persistent edge across long trading sessions. They do not rely on raw endurance. They rely on micro-recovery cycles built directly into their execution software. You can replicate this by implementing a structured non-sleep deep rest protocol at the exact midpoint of your waking day. By deliberately withdrawing all focal vision and dropping your brainwave frequency from high beta down into alpha and theta bands for a precise 15-minute interval, you accelerate the clearance of extracellular glutamate. This is the biological equivalent of clearing the cache on an overloaded server. You exit the protocol with your cognitive spreads completely reset, ready to absorb high-velocity information without friction. True optimization requires you to reject the cult of constant visibility. The industrial mindset demands that you look busy at all times, keeping your hands moving and your screen active. But high-value cognitive execution looks like absolute stillness from the outside. It looks like deep, unbroken contemplation punctuated by brief, decisive actions. The most successful investors and strategists do not make thousands of frantic moves a day. They make 3 or 4 highly calculated decisions with massive leverage. To operate at that level, you must decouple your self-worth from superficial activity metrics and start measuring your output purely through the lens of net information gain and execution accuracy. We must also dismantle the myth of multitasking once and for all. Neurologically, true multitasking is a physiological impossibility for the human brain. What you are actually doing is rapid serial task switching. Every time you flip between a spreadsheet, a text message, and a video call, your brain has to completely tear down its current cognitive framework and assemble a brand new one from scratch. This process requires a massive expenditure of energy. It is like constantly restarting a high-performance engine in the middle of a freezing winter night. You are wearing down the internal components and burning through fuel at an unsustainable rate. True leverage comes from monotasking with absolute monoacoustic intensity. The environment you work in acts as an external hard drive for your cognitive states. If your physical and digital workspaces are cluttered, disorganized, and filled with unpredictable stimuli, your brain is forced to allocate significant processing power just to maintain spatial awareness and ignore distractions. This constant background processing creates an invisible tax on your working memory. To eliminate this tax, you must design a workspace that mimics the stark utility of an advanced surgical theater. Every object in your line of sight must serve a direct functional purpose. If it does not actively contribute to the execution of the current task, it is a liability that must be removed from your environment. Let us look deeper into the structural mechanics of cognitive fatigue. When your system enters a state of exhaustion, your risk aversion profiles shift dramatically. A tired brain is biologically incapable of accurately calculating long-term risk-reward ratios. Instead, it defaults to immediate gratification and defensive preservation behaviors. You become significantly more likely to accept suboptimal terms in a negotiation, cut corners on critical analysis, or abandon a complex project in favor of an easier, low-value task. This is the exact moment when institutional systems extract maximum value from you. They exploit your fatigue-induced cognitive myopia to systematically take the other side of your trades. To counteract this defensive default state, you must implement a strict system of operational rules that govern your behavior during low-energy windows. Just as a professional trading firm has hard risk limits that automatically lock a trader out of their terminal if they hit a specific loss threshold, you must establish hard boundaries for your cognitive execution. Never make a major strategic decision, send a critical email, or alter a long-term plan after your internal metrics indicate you have crossed your daily threshold. You must route all complex execution to your high-leverage morning windows, leaving the low-energy periods exclusively for low-stakes, administrative tasks that require zero creative or analytical risk. The concept of biological arbitrage relies on your ability to exploit the systematic inefficiencies of the people around you. Most professionals operate in a permanent state of subclinical exhaustion, running on cheap stimulants, fractured sleep, and chaotic schedules. By simply fixing your neural infrastructure and protecting your attentional capital, you immediately gain a massive competitive advantage. You are playing a completely different game than your peers. While they are drowning in the noise of reactive communications, you are executing high-leverage moves with absolute clarity. This is how asymmetric returns are generated in every field of human endeavor. We also must evaluate the role of physiological feedback loops in maintaining cognitive stability. Your brain does not exist in a vacuum. It is constantly receiving information from your cardiovascular, respiratory, and metabolic systems. If your breathing is shallow and rapid, your body signals to your brain that it is under immediate physical threat, triggering a subtle but persistent survival response. This shifts blood flow away from the prefrontal cortex and toward the emotional centers of the brain, causing an immediate drop in analytical capability. By taking conscious control of your respiratory mechanics, you can actively manipulate your autonomic nervous system to maintain a state of calm, high-focus alertness. The ultimate goal of human optimization is not to transform yourself into a machine, but to respect the elegant, non-linear architecture of your biology. Machines are built for continuous, linear output until they break down. Biological systems are built for rhythmic oscillation. They are designed to pulse violently between periods of extreme, high-intensity exertion and deep, restorative recovery. When you align your lifestyle and your work protocols with this fundamental biological law, you unlock a level of sustainable high performance that looks completely impossible to the uninitiated. You stop fighting your biology and start leveraging it to achieve your strategic objectives. To build a truly resilient cognitive architecture, you must also master the art of deliberate informational filtering. The world is filled with low-quality, high-velocity data designed to elicit an immediate emotional reaction. If you allow this data to enter your consciousness without a filter, you are giving external actors direct control over your emotional state and your cognitive resources. You must become a radical gatekeeper of your mind, treating every piece of incoming information as a potential contaminant until proven otherwise. Turn off your notifications, ignore the sensationalized headlines, and focus exclusively on first principles data that has long-term utility for your objectives. This brings us to the final element of the cognitive optimization framework, the concept of operational velocity. Velocity is not the same thing as speed. Speed is simply how fast you are moving in a given direction. Velocity is speed with a specific direction. You can move incredibly fast while running in circles, burning massive amounts of energy without ever making real progress. True optimization is about achieving maximum velocity by ensuring that every single ounce of your cognitive energy is directed toward a clear, high-leverage objective. It is about eliminating all wasted motion, all redundant tasks, and all unnecessary friction from your execution pipeline. When you implement these protocols, you will notice a profound shift in your daily experience. The afternoon crash will cease to be an inevitable disaster and instead become a predictable variable that you can easily manage and mitigate. Your focus will become sharper, your strategic decisions will become cleaner, and your ability to execute under pressure will skyrocket. You will no longer be a victim of the attention extraction economy. Instead, you will operate as an elite sovereign executor, leveraging your biological systems to extract maximum value from the world around you while maintaining absolute internal balance and longevity. The choice before you is stark. You can continue to allow your cognitive capital to be strip-mined by institutional algorithms and chaotic environments, or you can take radical responsibility for your biological infrastructure. You can choose to treat your mind as a high-leverage asset that must be protected, optimized, and deployed with absolute precision. The protocols outlined here are not casual life hacks. They are the foundational infrastructure of elite performance. Implement them with ruthless consistency, guard your attention with extreme prejudice, and watch as your cognitive trajectory permanently decouples from the exhausted masses around you.